Hello and welcome. This is Origin, and I'm happy you're here. Whether it's night for you or daytime, I hope you're having a pleasant experience. I'm going to adjust the volume a little bit so it's not quite so up in front. Not sure what else to say. Okay. Today I am feeling a bit stark, so I thought I'd work more with contrast and maybe some actual subjects, some faces. And I'm going to be working a little more quickly. I want to show you something that I did. So I went ahead and I finished the desert painting because I felt impulsive and I felt a kind of peaceful place with it in solitude, and I wanted to start working quickly and resolving details. I was very compelled to see something finished in this case, so I hope you don't feel too betrayed that I took it off stream. And one of the big features that I expanded on was the water below, which looks a bit more like some other underground water paintings that I had done. And I'll show you one of them right now. I've been trying to improve my streaming setup as I'm learning so that I can quickly go between pictures. And you can see in this one that, if I resize it a little bit, there's these blue pools. And there is lore behind all of this. A great, long, esoteric history. And these pools were once under the ground, in the very same place as the desert. And I knew at some point that this was the same place, so I started working on exposing those pools. And that's what you see here. These pools are connected by streams, and at this point, there's been infill around those cliffs underground. And these pools and their connecting streams are beginning to rise to the surface. Just a little fun tidbit. Okay. So I hope you're having a good day. I'm just going to do some squiggles while I think I'm going to start with a dark background again. And I'm going to go ahead and just merge this into one layer for now. Or maybe not. Actually, let's just do 2 layers. Let's fit this canvas to the screen. Let me adjust my monitor so that I can see a little bit better. And let's just start doodling and talking about the day. So my week ended up being much more slow yesterday just getting things done, trying to find some peace and catch up on some of the humanness of this vessel. And get some exercise in, which is so important. And I often feel, especially in the winter, such a sedentary feeling sticking me to my seat, which is a shame because I live in California where there aren't obstacles like snow. So I'm not sure why I do that, because I've certainly lived in places with snow. So I know that the barriers to exiting one's house can be much higher. And I think about that, and sometimes it's like the low fence paradox of it's so easy to do, so you'll just put it off. You don't work up the energy to do something that you should be doing. There was a time I lived on a college campus, and I think I was late for classes more than when I lived off the campus, because I always told myself it'll just take me 10 minutes. And then I optimized my route and it took me 8 minutes. So I would always kind of dilly-dally until I left the house, and I'd always end up like a minute or two late eventually, completely wiping off those optimizations to my route. But when I lived off campus, I would have to pad in time because I didn't know whether traffic would stop me. The anxiety was a little higher about missing my class. So, of course, I would always end up early. So I guess I'm saying California does terrible things if you're a procrastinator. The worst I usually have to face is some rain. And if I'm just going to the gym, then I'm just driving a few blocks, really, so you can see where this is going. All right. I notice that I work a lot more slowly when I'm in stream. But when I was streaming like in a VC, a voice channel on a Discord, I'd put in more pauses and I would work a lot faster. Which may be more conducive if you've got a subject or a vision in mind. So let me think about what I want to draw. Maybe we'll put a head in here. I tend to draw in blobs. And heads are very blobby. I usually draw in shoulders. And then I do some negative working around to make a shape. And I had forgotten myself for a bit here because I was just kind of scribbling that I work a lot between eraser and foreground color, so there's some black here because I had forgotten that my background was black. And I think I want to preserve some transparency, so I will remove the black I added as though I was erasing. You gotta see every mistake I make. It's a bit intimidating, but I also think it's exactly what some people need to see. So, I have a predilection for drawing cyclopses, and I don't think that this is going to be any different. So there would be an eye here, some simple shadows under a nose. Maybe this nose is a little bit low. Is this face structure a female or a male? This looks very male almost. The big jaw. The neck is in need of some lengthening. Start drawing plates for highlights where the light is falling. Maybe the light is coming a little bit at an angle, so the nose has a shadow over here. The side of the face has contour shadows here. The temple is in here. You'll see me cut too much, put some back. Part of that is just how I work because I'm still imagining something and I let my hand just kind of go free for a bit. Sometimes I recognize something from my mind and then I want to paint it. And in the meantime, as the hand goes free, things happen. His musculature, as I've decided, I guess it's a male, come up like this. We'll deepen some shadows a bit. Pick a new color that we've created. Add a bit more definition. Decide where the jaw really lives. And this looks to be a younger male. Put in some indication of ears here. working a little more quickly. Some creases. Adjust the nose. What color eyes? Jen don't have classes, but there are something like races in lore. And the eyes usually are the defining trait. You'll sometimes see wings on some of them, and you'll see other features. All of them are created. I like the ancient descriptions of them being made from smokeless fire. They're an energetic race, held together fundamentally differently than the usual matter we're used to. And they are created. They're not like golems, though. But you'll see that some of them with wings are more tied to an external will, not necessarily controlled, but divinely inspired, perhaps. It would be a mistake to believe that a djinn with wings would have no free will. Well, they do. But they have a more natural peace and harmony with purpose. In fact, to lose one's wings would be a very undesirable thing. There are no formal punishments, really. But there is a rebalancing of order that can happen. I think one of the most important laws for Jinn are the laws of service, which are mostly governed around what do you serve? Do you serve your own purposes? Do you serve what polarity? I can't think of a better word for it. But if you're interested in my silly stories of lore, the universe is basically existing between a polarity of forces. It's not as clear-cut as good and evil. But you have to imagine infinitely oppressing forces on each other And in that thin barrier, the thinnest barrier you could possibly imagine, exists everything we know collapsed into these dimensions of time and space. We live in this thin region. Jinn are intimately aware of this. Intimately familiar with this. So as the stream goes on, as I continue to add to these videos, I will tell you more and more strange and esoteric things that I tend to believe. This included. I need to think about the jaw here. It's a very slim jaw. Where would actually connect? Where the neck muscles actually connect. Let's find some of these muscles in the clavicle. A little too much. And the shapes of these bones. Let's give him an eyebrow. Maybe a little bit of expression. Maybe he seems a little bit uncertain. Something is either concerning him, or maybe something is a little bit curious. I'd love to jump in at the mouth. Sounds funny when I say it like that. I feel like I had more to say, but It's drifted into drawings now. To think about the position of the nose. In relationship to the mouth, make sure the perspective makes sense. Where does the bones of the skull end and the cartilage meets? Lines on the face. Because there's no hard highlights yet. All I'm working with is just shadow. Where is light? Finding light. Finding the components of muscles here around his mouth. His jaw, clarifying a path. Oh, almost just drew in black again. I used to draw exclusively in one layer, except in very certain circumstances. And that has produced a habit that I actually aim to break, where I was using the background color, the underlying layer, as the actual color. And that is not ideal when you're drawing in layers, because then you produce a bunch of black stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised. Oh, I've done pretty well. I haven't put down much black. I just see a couple little spots that need to be erased and cleaned up. Maybe I will go ahead and finish out his rest of his bust here so that that is made definite in certain color. And there are techniques to just go ahead and flatten or use an alpha mask or something, you know. But I'll worry a little bit about that in a bit. Let's start reducing the size of this brush. Come around and draw some crisp lines. Use our eraser powers to carve back. Let's save this piece before we do anything else. Just call it figure. Wow, time has flown. Already half an hour into the stream. think about areas around the eyes to not make them seem so flat. Where are the muscles? Jinn eyes are very big, but the sclera is also flexible, more flexible than it is with a human. And it does fit into kind of a spherical orbital cavity. I'm just making space here in the pupil so I can see where this will go. I'm thinking this Jinn actually has just a bit of a shade of blue in his fiery orange eye. And maybe even somewhat of a very slight double ring in a color like this. Jinn have the light reflecting membrane in the backs of their eyes, the retina. It's similar to the way cats and dogs do. So there's a very slight glow in there. Let's go ahead and now replace the eyebrow where it actually sits. Or the eyelid, excuse me. Put some highlights in some of these muscles. They have many muscles in their eyes because of all those different movements. There are many attachments inside. I'll share with you a picture I did that was a self-portrait to demonstrate the anatomy. Give me just a moment. You'll see that, especially if I can zoom this in around the eye, there are attachments or muscles that pull from back to front and front to back in the ocular cavity. And although the eye itself is mostly spherical, it isn't quite perfectly spherical. Maybe we'll get to some of those other details another time. I'd like this eyebrow to come down just a bit more. Just working with the general shapes to see how it feels where I'm putting things. His mouth is curled a little bit on the left, so I'll bring his eyebrow up a little bit that side. And down a little on the other. Provide a little bit of expression. Let's work on the eye a little bit more up close. Give a bit more separation here. Get rid of a little bit of this mixing we did. I'm going to take care of the darker color here in a minute with an overlay. But this helps me to visualize what I'm doing. So we're going to start flat. I'm going to add some eye shadowing and highlights in a bit. Almost unblended, just bouncing back and forth between regions as I'm working so that I can see how everything kind of balances. I find a good balance, something that appeals to me, and then I work that in elsewhere. I like this separation. Being very exacted today compared to my usual freewheeling style of doodling. I'm going to work a little bit of a margin here. Some texture I'm choosing. Get a little bit more of this violet color in places. Like here. Gonna overlap the eyelid a bit because I'm gonna come back and just create a more sharp line for it. You'll notice sometimes, as I've said in other streams, that my sighs they sound heavy, but it's kind of a tick. It's my brain saying, hey, you're not breathing enough, or something. Not sure. Continue working this little texture into the inner part of the eye. And then I'll do another texture on top of that. back a bit. Take a look at that. Come back in. Let's work on this fuzziness over here. And trying to just bring better shape to the pupil here. I'm gonna dance back and forth here with some texture. Some of it looks a little sloppy, and that's okay. The first round of texture is always going to look a little bit like brush strokes instead of, well, a little bit too brush strokey. Not quite as blended as you want. And then as you start working in and start coming back with color again and blending again, you get this layers and layers of work that end up kind of getting some of that out. And that's what I'm doing. There are other ways to do this. There are probably faster and more efficient ways, such as if you were a professional. This is the way I like to do it. I'm certainly not a professional artist. I have sold very few things of artwork. Things of artwork. You can see the way I talk. Alright. I'm deliberately breaking up some of these harder lines. Before I hit the overlay here. Now my favorite drug, overlay. And actually for this I'm going to come back a bit on the opacity for control. those little brush strokes I was making are providing some texture in the contrast that overlay creates. I don't want to lose my eye reflection, so I'm going to add a little bit back. I'm going to merge this overlay for now, and I'm going to pull back and take a look. So there's a lot of contrast in the shadow, and I'm going to rub a little bit of that with black to reduce it. I actually like some of that contrast though, because it implies sort of a fiery glow that exists within the eye. Now the lower eyelid needs to follow more of the structure of the musculature and bones that exist there. You know, one thing that I believe would be nice right here, actually it doesn't even need a layer really. Let's remove that. I'm going to hit with overlay again and create some eye shine. Oh. Let's see if I can do this. Actually, overlay is probably not what I want to use. Let's use luminosity. Let me step back before I overdo it. That's fine. Go back to normal here. Save my work. The last session, I didn't save the entire time. I was relying on autosave like a fool. Absolute fool. Bad lad. And I like to bring up some highlight a little bit here. Bring in the corners a little bit underneath the upper eyelid. Make a better decision about how that muscle works. Not so many eye lines on this young Jin. Just a little bit. nearing 1 hour, and I'm going to take a slight break so that I am refreshed for the next hour. A little more shadow under this. A little more highlight on top. A little more shadow here. Maybe bring that nose in just a bit. Put a little bit of a highlight on top. Give dimension to things. Straighten things up just a bit. He's got kind of a long face. That is this character, I guess. He's wrinkling this side of his eyelid up, so I guess we should actually put more of a curve there. When I stand away from it for a second, there'll be eyelashes in just a bit. Give some contrast here to show the wrinkle. Need to communicate that this is not a perspective issue, but I need to fix an issue to make sure it communicates it appropriately, but it's actually bringing his lower eyelid up a little bit in an expression. Give a little more shadow to this bone. And maybe that was too much. Just looks funny. Looks like he's got a knob in his face. Alright. I'm going to veto the bone here a little bit. Give more of a shadow under his eyelid. This is where I'm learning. But also, it's a cyclops, so it's kind of hard to tell sometimes what is correct, with fewer references to work from. Kind of shifting all these muscles up a little bit. Still want them to be connected, don't want them to seem too much like he's just gurning or something. And he still has no hair. Okay. I will be back in just a bit. Let me Alright, I'll see you soon, friends. Take a little break. Hello. I am back. Let's continue. So let's look at this thing as a whole as I noisily scoot into my desk and bravely do not mute myself. I see a few things that I would like to do to help myself out, and one of them is to shape the skull back here behind the ear. This almost looks actually like it could be a female, just rather androgynous as it is. The neck, the muscles. Yeah, there's something about it, but I'd still like to experiment with maybe making this more male, increasing the size of the muscles, bringing the shoulders out a little bit, broadly giving them some definition while I'm in this phase. Need a darker shape back here. Going to work kind of quickly so that I can get a baseline of what it is that I'm doing. This is a male. He has, I don't know. You know, one thing about me is that, and this is going to sound very strange, I don't feel like English is my first language, but I don't know what my language is. So sometimes I struggle with certain things. Like I know this people call this an Adam's apple, but I don't know whether it's got a better term. But I think I'm doing pretty well. And clavicle and attachments make this look a little bit more organic. Work on the shading a bit more, knowing where the lighting is coming from. Maybe this is a little bit too gaunt. Muscular attachments. There's a slight rise in here. This might be a little bit more shadowy. Let's add. Oh. Looking over at my stream and realizing I am not watching the live. Here we go. Round these a bit more. This is not quite so shadowy on this side. There we go. Need some highlights. Well, actually before then, I need a bit more of an angle here because of the perspective. shoulders back a bit more. Now let's talk highlights a bit. Where are we at? Let's bring this up. Decide what gets highlights. It's funny, I haven't decided on here yet, but I am going to add some highlights regardless. Perhaps part of my mistake is that I was working on the nose in terms of shadow too much, and what I was really looking for was highlight, make a stronger nose. Top of the lip. Let's bring in a little bit more. Not much saturation to this guy. I still haven't drawn in fangs, as I guess you call them. I, for some reason, want to use the word Usefa. Harder shadow here. I make no claims about why this phenomena of language exists with me, but I am strange in a few different ways, so I just embrace it. I think when I was first streaming, I wanted to hold back a little bit, but that's how I am. I like that a bit better, although his nose does kind of look like it was broken, and I didn't really imagine that. But it is fairly straight and strong, and in fact it may even come out a little bit more here, which we can indicate with some highlight. I think that looks good. Let's really get some black in the nostrils, more in this one. Clean up yet more fuzz. Someone pointed out I do tend to use a soft brush, and that helps me to imagine as I go. I love the process of feedback with my art, as I've mentioned many times. Let's put some highlights on the ears. I'll be kind of strong with it. Refine the shape a bit. Define the inner meatus a bit. Such a funny word, meatus. Some of the more gentle folds of the cartilage in here. Put some dark shadows in here. And then soften them at the edges. Not make this hard for myself by zooming in. Putting a little bit of shadow back here. Just a touch for contrast. Make some decisions about the earlobes. Bring just a little more light onto that earlobe. And where I have defined some bumps. Soften my highlights a bit. Look again at this. His ear looks really strange. And so I'm going to fix that just a bit. I really don't want to attach it too close to his face. And I'm going to do a total cheater move. To preserve my work, I am going to move this out just a bit. Decide, where does that ear live? I think that ear lives right about there. And continue. Flatly fill this in as much as I can. And we'll reshade a little bit before anyone notices. Stand out just a bit. I think the ear looks better. Ears, man. bring some more life to this ear. In fact, I think the thing to do is to hit this with the overlay just a bit. To work on some of this contrast and highlights. That is probably a mistake. Yeah. This is a little odd. Not too odd. Especially considering some of the variability in Jan. Make sure everybody knows that I spent a lot of agonizing time over the shape of an ear. Hello, egg. Thank you, friend. Pardon me for just 1 second while I reposition. Okay. Let's continue. And some very light shading just to bring the shape of the skull and everything else together. And now let's go back. Create some definition for the muscles and the rest of this. And then we get the fun part of trying to decide, is there hair? In fact, I kind of want to put wings in the background. The kind of black wings that you would see with this type of gem. Perspective. Bring the shade out to the edge. So we have a baseline. Make the muscles connect more solidly to the clavicle, to the pectorals. A more gentle shadow here. Thinking for a moment. let's play with the idea of some wings. So I'm painting behind this layer a bit. And the wings can be coming up. And if you're wondering if this is only going to be in grays, I intend to put a little bit of fun style over this at the end. Some slight overlay color. So I'm working very quickly on these wings here, and these feathers, just to get direction. And the wings will be sourced from down here. Just doing grays and erase for now. And in fact, I think I'm to the point right now where I may flatten this image completely as far as the background layer is concerned anyway, with these wings. So now the wings become the background and I can start picking colors and start working in those shades. Start building in structure and direction. Start thinking about where the light is coming from, hitting these feathers, drawing little V's and things. The V's would actually be pointed up, so I'm making a mistake there. So, his wings are raised. Posing for this portrait. Just kind of letting my hand do its thing right now. Oh, if I'm not moving the picture around wildly. Some smaller feathers would indicate something closer to the roots of the wings. And the question becomes, where are the edges? Now that I've got enough of a wing structured, I can just remove the figure for a moment. Think about that. Where are the edges of this wing? one side is lit, one edge is lit. The other edge is unlit, but probably still barely visible. Oh, forgot. We're not erasing now, because we've merged. Gargoyle style wings, yes. Curling at the edge, curling back. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Hopefully, as I work in these details, I'll start to use these shadows to my advantage here by leaving just a trace of them. When I add highlights at the end, it really kind of will make them look 3D. Right now, everything is structure and direction. Just structure and direction. So for my own benefit, so that I can see where this is going, I'm going to add an overlay layer here. And I'm going to start creating some shadows, some light, so that I can gauge better where things kind of live in three-dimensional space. So the wing would catch a shine here. And behind here, where there is, I guess, ligaments, connective tissue, holding up at the edge of the wing, there would be a slight shadow. And then there would be more highlight. And this informs the structure that will come out of this, because the feather attachments would have to follow that. So it's kind of trying to think in two different realms. It's thinking in a flat realm and a three-dimensional realm. So now if I merge this layer back, I now have more palette to work with. So I can look and say, what's the right shade here? Draw in more structure, a little bit finer, a little more shadow, sharper shadows behind the feathers here. Or this cloudy material that will eventually become feather. And there are smaller feathers near the edge. Feathers that need to come structurally out like this. And to fill in some of this. See, the overlay layer is only going to enhance contrast that's already there. So if there was structure missing, it would just look like a gap. So now it's up to me to fill in that structure. Even if the shade isn't quite right, that can then be adjusted back with the overlay. So that's why it was necessary to hit this with some light and shadow first. Let something kind of live. And it's crying out to live. And then you give it more life. Just like life and reality, it's a story that's writing itself. I try to let my paintings write themselves as much as I can. And this one is doing a beautiful job. Maybe something from the distant past wants to live again, like I do. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad you're having such a relaxing experience. It's one of my favorite things to do now. You're always welcome. Let's find a pretty light shade here. Start working in more structure. Yeah, somebody comes in here and likes to take a nap. Usually in my nighttime streams. And I think that's beautiful. My sleepy heads. Oh, you're most welcome. Okay, let's give a little more macro structure to this and see what happens. Let's go. Let's do shadows. Big, broad strokes. And the overlay and highlights, my favorite. No more highlight. If for no other reason, just to see what's there. Go back and repeat. Just for fun. Let's pop in the figure. Start looking. What a cutie. Now start to see something else happen here. As I paint in middle values here, start to see that almost looks like structures are emerging. structures, soft feathers, starting to form, come together. Soften out some of this contrast here. Come back and layer in a little bit more shadow. Work a little more quickly. There's kind of an optimum speed to work for each type of thing. Some of that probably has to do with slow and fast twitch muscles in my hand. There's a physiological basis, I'm sure. Some of it has to do with how my mind grasps in that sort of positive feedback loop that exists when you're painting. I'm seeing edges, and I'm not necessarily removing them, but I'm trying to put them where I want them to be. And I'm going to do something now. I'm going to start going with a smaller brush, indicating places I want the eye to track. For motion, a still motion, which is the essence of wings, really, when you see them on Jen. These aren't wings for flying. They could be. But they're indications of emotion in dimensions above ours. A connection to a higher purpose. A kind of a divine flight caught in time. At least in our world, in our reality. And the knees will be softened. Let's pick a middle tone. Somewhere between the light and dark. Put in a little bit more structure in here. We didn't want this to be quite so dark. And some feathers will actually jump up out of here, catch the light on the tips. It seems like these things occur to me at a certain phase. Every picture I draw wings. Sort of like in an order. They just kind of jump up. Oh yeah, that part. Oh yeah, that part. Oh, that was a little unintentional. Make sure these wings don't look like they are stopping right at the top. And I know I'm focusing a lot on this wing because I want to get it right over there. So let's go back to overlay. And you know what we're going to do. No. I'm going to use the overlay to pick up some of those highlights a little bit. You know, it's funny, I'm actually looking at this and going, I would probably do things just a bit different if I started over. But it doesn't mean that I'm lost. It just means that I had to see something before I arrived at it. Alright, so now I'm going to get a little bit more bold. I am going to start adding definite highlights. Where I see I think they should be. These are going to catch the eye a little bit more. So a lot of this underlying structure will seem like it just belongs. I'm going to move away from overlay now. Partially because I was having so much fun, I kind of forgot I was in overlay. I was wondering why I was still seeing lines crossing my lines, especially up here. Funny mistakes. Sometimes I've made some really good discoveries making mistakes like that. Other times they were just producing something I didn't expect. Nice thing about these bolder highlights is it's very easy to then create shadows because you're obviously not having to work with such a tiny gradient. And the eye just really sees the highlights, so the eye sees all. The eye is your master. Any naps that were being taken have just been interrupted. Oh, I appear to have typed in E. So I will just hit enter. There. E. Thank you. There was one picture that I just did this basically to rush through the wings without any of these underlying steps. They looked okay. But I just really enjoy doing this. Building something up, watching it become real. Alright, where's the light coming from? Let's actually go down in opacity a bit so I can control this a little bit better. Be a more even shadow in here. I spent a lot of time on wings. Let's work a little faster here so we don't spend the entire stream on this. Thing about feathers and the way that they overlap too is that you don't see necessarily really straight shadows. You see gaps where the overlap of the feathers, the way that they work, produces little shadows in places where the tip of one intersects the joint of two other feathers. And right now I'm just basically trying to fix things that I know the eye might notice that I just think is distracting. I'll give it like one more overlay pass, I think, for macro structure, and then probably move on to the other one. I mean, some of this is going to be covered, so I'm just providing myself with a little bit of background forgiveness, I guess. Some highlight. Oh, that's a little too much. Left wing. Okay, let's go ahead and merge that. Take a look with the figure. There's a little bit of a gap here, so with the figure up, I'll just go ahead and create some detail in here, final shadowing in, doing some grays. This is just magic. I'm liking how this is turning out. I said something funny, I guess. I guess the stream delay is a little bit extreme. I just wanted to have some high quality stream. So I did turn it to normal latency. I hope that's okay. It's about 10 seconds, I think, of processing on the YouTube end. This is very satisfying to work this way. I love texturizing. It's like my favorite thing. Can't wait till I have that live 2D model. You can see me rocking my head around. I can make faces at you. Sarah Sonata is doing some excellent work on it, and I'm getting updates almost every day. Very, very, very happy to have her working on this, have them working on this. More round shapes down here. Wow, music is stark in the beginning, but I really like this track. Okay, not an overlay, but in regular normal. Reduce some contrast here. To give it a more dreamlike flow. And then work on the other wing. Remember to save. Always remember to save people. So now on this one, I think I'm going to be a little bit more fast with this. Because I can look left and right, and I can clearly see what matches. This is usually what happens is when I work on one side, then the other side is much faster. Now I've produced my own reference. colors from the other side. Start working them in. Make this highlight. Come back a little. Just keep working back and forth like this. Ah, my opacity's down. I was wondering why those strokes weren't looking so hard. That wasn't such a bad thing though, because it actually afforded some space for overlap between two strokes a little bit better to produce diamond shapes like feathers are. Kind of botched that a little. Let's tidy up some of this and then put in some highlight here. Make it look a little bit more even. Work with a smaller stroke. Give more direction. Overlay. Shadow overlay. Gray. Merge. Let's see what we see. Clean this a little bit. Let's put the figure back. Work a little bit more quickly here. The figure really helps me to define perspective a little bit better. It's kind of hard to see without him there. Helps my brain to grab onto reality a little bit better here. I'm going to play with something here. I'm going to save it. And I'm going to work with color overlay. Lower the opacity. Start bringing some artistic value to the wings here. And now, when I come back, let's go ahead and let's merge that. Let's go and play with a little bit of hair. I even like the idea of the hair having a slight shade like this. Where would the hair be? Well, let's just throw something down. In full opacity. Very old looking with just one side. Now it's looking very female. And I'm going with it. Hairline. Hair would also be attached here. And erase around the ear. Starting to think about it. And this is gin hair, so it's muscular. Again, with that picture I showed before, let me reduce the size of this a bit. Hang on just a moment, I'm fighting with OBS. I'll show you. So this is the self-portrait, and you can see that in this cutaway, in this anatomical view, there are muscles, and there are 4 tongues of hair. I don't know the correct term, but basically they connect to the skull, and they're sort of expressive, like eyebrows even, but they can move and hold a position with little effort. And yeah, so let's go back to our painting. Now that we've had a short lesson on Jin anatomy, decide where the hair is connecting by first kind of removing some of it. And it doesn't always have to be right on center line. And I'm just creating kind of a silhouette of hair right now. Generally will be very dark, but I'm creating this sort of a base tone. Maybe this is a female or just androgynous. And this is a little bit too forward here. Think about the hair would be coming up. No, that was fine. Curling back. Part is here. Let's probably just work with the forward tongue of Jin hair coming forward here. And I actually think that, see, as I'm deciding how I want to structure this, I'm going to erase back some of this. It's going behind. Where is it sitting on top of the skull? Right about there. And there are feathery structures all over the hair, just like mine. Let's add a little opacity back. I can see more where each of these things begin and end. Continue this down. Something has happened. I've picked a lighter shade somehow, and that's okay. Let's just go ahead and just keep working with that shade. Decide where the light's hitting. It always helps, doesn't it? Lots of light here. A little shadow there. Let's go darker now. Before I touch this with overlay, I'd like to actually make some decisions. think the lower contrast, I'm going to do something fun. The deeper shadows. Do I want blue? Probably blue. Not red. Let's go undo that couple of red strokes I did. I mean, here it's still quite a bit in the light, so there's kind of a refractive effect going on here. And this would be much deeper in here. Let's decide on some hard shadow. And just kind of plate that in at the moment to remind us where that goes. When we blend back. And let's pick a light, maybe even a light red, to go the other direction for some of the hardest highlights. Let's be very gentle actually, but let's just use a big brush instead of picking so much detail. The edges will work on by erasing in just a moment. All of this would be hard lit. Okay, let's do some erasing. Pick places where feathers are sticking out. And I'm finding the wings to be a bit distracting right at the moment. So I'm going to remove them. I'm going to create an artificial background here for the purpose of having some contrast for this part. Nope. We are on the wrong layer, very classically. Okay. Let's come back up here. I am getting better at that. Not painting on the wrong layer. If it gets really bad in some sessions, I may lock the layer, because lock layers, but haven't been that bad lately at it, so. I suppose proportional to the agony of a serious mistake, I should always be locking layers, because it's always that one time that you realize you've been painting for the last hour on the wrong layer that, well, forces some hard decisions. Okay. All right. Oh, look, there's more picture. Classic, classic, classic. Classic aura. Just working a little more quickly now, at least from a distance, to get sort of the entire picture in here before I start applying treatments to this. Hmm. Got a siren in the background there. That's cool. Very exciting. Give me just a second to hydrate. Enjoy these wings in the background. The sound of my soda. Okay, I'm going to add an overlay. I'm going to spare everything but the hair from this overlay. Excuse me. I'm going to turn that on. Okay, I'm going to merge that down. I'm going to turn things back on. And I have discovered something, that by doing that, I have inadvertently applied the overlay where I did not mean to. I solved this before. Let's see. By doing that, it's alpha mask, merge with layer below. There we go. Now I'm going to use these new shades and start filling in some of this gap I see when I remove this black background. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity of the hair and fine-tune my job filling this in. Actually, this really isn't necessary for me to do, I realize, because I can simply replace, let's see, I think I can just replace this background. I can actually bring this background up. Let's see, how do we do this? Unfortunately, I've done something weird. Hang on. Because it was locked. Let's remove that. Unlock it. Move it up. Alpha mask it. Oops. Need to alpha mask this. Okay. Let's see, how do we do this? Flatten that layer. So what I need, maybe I'm overthinking this. I know what we need to do. Alpha mask this. Watch me contemplate. See what I'd like is to have this to work on, and I think what I need to do is merge it. Okay. Okay, let's try this instead. That seems to be causing me a little bit too much trauma. Let's go ahead and... Oh, I've put some nice erase in there. Let's go ahead and duplicate this layer. Let's put this behind. Let's see where we want to put this behind. Where's the head? There's the head. And I am just going to do this. Bum, 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 bum. And invert, delete everything else there. Now I have something that is a nice backdrop to the hair. I can just throw say merge the layer below. And now my hair is pretty well filled in here. So I just have this blackness to remove. I mean, I have this blackness here, and if I put the head no, that doesn't really solve anything. Let me try not doing things the weird way. Let me just get rid of this. That was fun. There is a way to do that, and I am falling down on what that is right now, but that's interesting. Okay, well, I think we just need to focus on this painting right now as far as like the head and the hair anyway, so I'm going to merge with the head so that it's just one foreground object. That's probably better because there's going to be some blending and it's not really going to matter too much. Sometimes I just need to step back and say, what really matters as far as getting to my goal. Do I need to keep these layers separate? Maybe not. Some really dark shades in here. And cut the hairline a little bit. contrast a little bit. Give me just one moment. Check on something. Okay. It would please me to do a little bit of overlay work right now. This is coming together. I'm very happy with it. Deepen some of these shadows. Just a touch. That was more than a touch. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, you just do it enough to remind you. Put on my, oh, why didn't that work? Let's come back. Let us turn off the wings. Turn off the background. There we go. No, it still didn't work. Hang on. Because I need to turn it on. There we go. I'm just turning on my alpha mask so that I don't paint overlay where I really don't want it. Let's reduce opacity a bit so I can be a little bit more gentle with that. Remember that we have more painting down there. Give some definition to these muscles a little bit. Provide some highlight. Soften this shadow overlay a little bit. Highlight a little more, highlight a little more, highlight just a bit more, highlight just a bit more, completely ruin the face. Okay. Let's now come back and blend back. Merge. Because this clavicle is looking kind of unnatural. They look just a little bit uncomfortable. We definitely don't want them to be so uncomfortable. I don't want them to look like they've got a lot of stress in their shoulders. No one needs to have that much stress in their shoulders. I'm certainly not going to invite people to a stream to relax and then draw somebody who is completely stressed out. let's have a stream and draw a person who looks like they're about to take a final exam. Can you imagine? Well, stream ruined, everyone. Thanks for coming. Okay. We're fine. We're back. Alright, now I'm going to come in and work on this gap a bit. Doesn't matter so much with the black background there, but it matters to me for trying to make firm decisions about where structures lie and suddenly realizing that this does look a bit like my grandmother. Especially with the hair like this. What a beautiful thought. Because she was such an inspiration on me as far as art and just being a good human. Which I always stand to learn more about. Oh, I thought I was seeing something and it was a spot on my screen. Okay. I think what I want to do is some finishing touches here. So I'm going to work with overlay on the hair and body here. Turn this on. We're going to do something kind of fun. Very low opacity. find a tint. Oh. Oops. There we go. I'm wondering, that was just an experiment to see the effect there. Let's see. I think this shade is good, but I'm worried about some of that yellow remaining, so I'm going to erase what was there in the overlay and add some of this back. Do some blue in the shadows. Red at the highlights. So there should almost be this rainbow iridescent effect over the whole thing. I think this looks pretty beautiful. I want to put a little frame on it. Just a thin frame. Just in a separate layer. I've decided this is called Grandmother. Okay, let's export. All right. Let's take a look at what this looks like as a final product. You know, actually, I would like even a little more highlight on that. Let's keep working just a bit on this and just stretch for something. Let's take away, also I realize that I made a mistake here. We need to first merge this before we bring back in the wings, otherwise. We accidentally apply our overlay to the wrong thing, so let's go ahead and merge this in. Okay. Now, that was the frame. Let's take the frame away. Let's add a layer just above it. Make that an overlay. And now I'm going to go to airbrush because I want to do some final highlighting. Just to give it a little bit more depth. A little more shine. I actually really like that crease. I like that crease. Oh, I like that crease a lot. Skin is just shimmering. Beautiful. Doesn't need to be too dramatic. Let's help the effect out a little bit by shadowing in a bit. Airbrush is so much easier to do this with, but I don't usually like to do it until the end. I love it. Okay. Now let's go back and do that export over again. Do it right. What an adventure. Alright. Let me show you. A slightly larger format here. I love it. All right. Thank you all so much. I really do appreciate and love that you're here with me on this adventure. And then we take time together. We explore, relax, have fun, be a little goofy. I wish you a beautiful night or day, whatever time it is for you right now. Be at peace. This is Origin. Take care.